welcome. You're watching the Newshour Agenda. I'm Padmaja Joshi. 2.5 years after the Galwan clashes, China tried another misadventure along the LAC. On the 9th of December, troops of China and India came face to face at the LAC in the Tawang sector of Arunachal Pradesh. Here is what the army has confirmed in a formal statement. They said on the 9th of December 2022, PLA troops contacted the LAC in Tawang sector, which was contested by our troops in a firm and resolute manner. This face-off led to minor injuries to few personnel from both sides. Both sides immediately disengaged from the area. As a follow-up of the incident, brigade commanders in the area from both sides held a flag meeting to discuss the issue in accordance with structured mechanisms to restore peace and tranquility. What else do we know about what happened on the 9th of December? What we know so far is that 350 PLA soldiers started pelting stones at Indian Army troops in a place close to the Arunachal-Sikkim-China tri-junction. Indian troops retaliated, injuring at least 30 Chinese. In the process, 6 Indian soldiers have sustained injuries of a non-life-threatening nature. They are currently undergoing treatment in Guwahati. Now, the issue has naturally gained political currency as well. The Congress will now be moving an adjournment motion tomorrow in the Lok Sabha. The party's leaders have also demanded that the Prime Minister make a statement on the issue, and they also brought up the familiar Lal Aankh taunt, questioning India's silence in the face of Chinese aggression.
When will Prime Minister show red eyes to China? Well, will Prime Minister give a befitting reply to China? They can't brazenly occupy our territory. We demand, both inside and outside the Parliament, Prime Minister should come to Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha and reply to the country and to the opposition about the exact position of brazen and illegal occupation of India's territory at different points by the Chinese PLA.
Now, even as this inevitable politics has started, the real questions facing India are: what has prompted China's aggression in Arunachal? Has a rattle China increased its saber rattling? And why is China now getting aggressive in addition to Ladakh along the LAC in the eastern sector in Arunachal as well?
You're watching the News Hour at 10, debate number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
All right, joining us on the debate, we have Captain Bansal, Director at the India Foundation, Kamru Choudhury, Leader of the Congress, political analyst, and Anirban Banerjee. But my first question is to Major General Sanjay Meston. General Meston, if you can first help our viewers understand what is the difference between Tawang and Ladakh along the LAC.
Good evening.
Good evening,
as
sir.
regards the difference is concerned, the terrain spells out. By and large, eastern Ladakh or the entire Ladakh area is fairly plain. That is the Excision Plains. However, most of the dominating heights we are occupying in the area of eastern Ladakh, and the mountains are, most of them are fairly barren. Now, coming on to the Arunachal Pradesh, at the lower ridges and even fairly high ridges, up to about 13,000 feet, you have the tree line, and thereafter again the mountains become barren. And here also the Chinese on the other side are located on the Tibetan plateau. It gives them a major advantage, the entire plateau area, because for them their troops are already acclimatized. They are coming from a height of about 18,000 to 17,000 feet in the Tibet Autonomous Region. So there they have a terrain advantage, and thereafter if they come onto the heights which we are occupying, thereafter it becomes little advantageous to them to roll down. And therefore for us to sustain on these heights with the infrastructure whatever we have, at times becomes little difficult. But nevertheless, our troop deployment, whether it is eastern Ladakh, whether it is Sikkim, whether it is Arunachal Pradesh, we have more deployment of troop density, much more than what the Chinese have. Our bunkers are prepared 100% all along the LAC. So therefore we have a lot of advantage. So the terrain advantage what they have, we have overcome it by our military posturing and strong deterrence in terms of deployment, in terms of military preparedness.
Okay.
So these are the major differences. But basic issue in that area is terrain is more barren. And of course, in these areas also, both the areas in these heights, Tawang 14,000, 15,000, 16,000 feet, the troops have to be acclimatized. And in this case, most of the places we have to do second stage or the third stage acclimatization for troops to be deployed. And once they are acclimatized, then we remove the differential even in terms of acclimatization. Then the troops, whether at the Chinese side and whether it is the Indian side, we are at par in terms of acclimatization. So these are the major differences, and further whatever questions you ask, we will address all the issues.
All right. So basically, even though topographically India is at a disadvantage, we are continuously, Captain Alok Bansal, ramping up our infrastructure, especially when it is compared to maybe the 1960s, the 1980s. Would you say that at least now in the year 2022, we are pretty much on an even keel when it comes to China, even though they are sitting here in a plateau and we have an uphill task when we want to go uphill to places like, say, Bumla or Yangste, etc.?
See, from 62, for decades, we had a very lopsided policy where we didn't want to build roads because we thought Chinese would come down, though I am yet to figure out which are the roads which allows only one-way movement. It is only after 80s that we started occupying these territories, and of course, it is only after 2014 that we are talking of Trans-Arunachal Highway, which is going to be a very big thing, which is going to move from east to west. Yeah. Because in Arunachal, what happens is that after the Kameng sector, which is Tawang area, if you go to the rest of Arunachal, the valleys are north-south. So going from one valley to another is a very, very difficult proposition. But now if you are going to have an east-west road, that would allow Indian Army to move troops from one location to another. That would actually be much more beneficial. On the Tibetan side, it's relatively a flat ground. So it is much easier for Chinese to move around. It is also high altitude. When we say there are advantages, yes, Chinese have an advantages, they have a flat, but there is a big disadvantage there. Their aircraft taking off from Tibet, their carrying capacity is much lower as compared to our aircraft, which are taking over from planes, because as you move high, so there are issues. And as far as Tawang is concerned and Ladakh is concerned, one major difference is that in Tawang area, we have a clear-cut McMahon line, which was delineated in 1914, which we insist is the border, though of course Chinese don't accept it, but there is a very, very clear delineation. Okay. And it is, they have a different perception of line of control.
Okay, so ultimately it all boils down to perception, but everyone is still wondering what exactly happened on the 9th of December. While everyone is already fulminating, demanding answers, demanding statements, demanding that we show red eyes to China, what actually happened? Breaking it down for you is my colleague Srinjoy Choudhury. We can now break to you that actually on the 9th of December, there were two separate clashes that took place on the same day. There was heavy stone pelting, which was done by the PLA troops. What was the sequence of events? Over to you, Srinjoy.
Yes, thank you. First of all, this is something that brewing for about 10 days before that. And the Indian side clearly saw that the Chinese were building up, which is why the Indian side was prepared. Now, as you rightly said, there were two clashes at the same time on the same day, that is the 9th. And the first clash that has been talked about that involved Jackrif was the bigger clash, because there were 200 Chinese troops facing the Jackrif boys. The second clash was a little distance away, also in the Yangste sector. There were about 70 to 80 Chinese soldiers. Now, this clash was naturally less intense. There were fewer casualties, fewer injuries. Yes. And as a result, has not been talked about so much. But there was definitely a second clash, is what we are hearing. Okay. Less intense clash. What we are also hearing is that along in that area, there are more Chinese troops and more Indian troops. India has moved troops there just to be as a part, abundant caution. Also, all those officers who hold sensitive positions and were on leave have been called back, because this is a situation where anything can happen. Those things have cooled down. A brigadier held talks on the 10th, but officers who hold sensitive positions in those areas have been requested to end their leave and come back and join work.
All right. So everyone is on high alert, leaves cancelled, officers back. Any Chinese aggression has been repulsed. And not to mention the series of moves before that, Kamru Choudhury. Thank you very much, Enjoy, for bringing us that big piece of news. Would you say that that's lal aankh enough? Nobody is sitting around twiddling their thumbs waiting for the Chinese to come over and walk up to Kanyakumari.
Well, Padmaja, there is a difference between the military action and the government's action politically. There is a hell and hell difference. No Indian will ever doubt the capabilities and the resolve of our brave soldiers and the Indian army in dealing with the Chinese. We have been dealing with them since long, until today also, yesterday also, we are dealing with them. But nobody is doubting the Indian army and our brave soldiers who have given their lives. At least 20 of them lost their lives. But even after that, our Prime Minister lied on a all-party meeting, says that nobody entered, there was no incursion. Even External Affairs Minister had to issue a statement. The Foreign Affairs, External Affairs Ministry had to give a statement. What actually happened in Galwan?
So when you say that, when will India show lal aankh? I'm always very curious about this. What exactly do you want? Do you want war?
You are warmongering. You are warmongering.
I'm not warmongering at all. I am genuinely asking.
When the gentleman, from India Foundation says, when the gentleman from India Foundation states that every development that happened in Arunachal Pradesh happened after 2014, there is an agenda out there. It's very clear and simple.
Okay, so here
India
is what government documents, even if we leave Captain Alok Bansal out, here is what government documents say. Vis-a-vis, under the UPA, according to data from Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, under the UPA, that's between 2009 and 2014, 0.6 kilometers of national highways were built along the LAC. As opposed to during the NDA regime between 2014 and 2019 March, there is 1.5 kilometers of road being built every single day. This is hard data which has been given by the ministry. Does that qualify as lal aankh for you? Let me also quote to you actually, because you said there's a difference between what the government does and what the army does. Now, sir, here's what happens. The army is mobilized. The army can move to the border if it is made roads. If you speak to any veteran, they will famously tell you that some of the roads that were being used in Arunachal until very recently were made by the Chinese in 1962. You would be shocked to know that. Now let me tell you that according to Parliament documents, the central government has sanctioned 2,319 kilometers of roads to be built under the Arunachal Pradesh package of roads. Do you know that currently we have the Sela Tunnel project which is being made? Now the Sela Tunnel project will enable our troops to move closest to the border, that is the LAC. This is what the government does so that the army can move and it can fight. That's the government lal aankh.
Padmaja, whatever you have stated is a very good data that you have given. We are very proud of that. But don't you think that the Manmohan Singh government or Rajiv Gandhi government has done anything for the country or anything for the border roads? We are from the Northeast India, and I know how difficult the terrain is out there in Arunachal Pradesh. Even when Rajiv Gandhi declared Arunachal Pradesh as a state in 1986, we all know what happened out there in Arunachal Pradesh.
Sir, I just told you what is being done for the border roads in Arunachal. Now you're asking what is being done. I quoted to you what is being done. Let me repeat for your benefit. You have the Sela Tunnel project, which is in Arunachal Pradesh. You have got 35 works amounting to 14,032 crore rupees only in the state of Arunachal Pradesh. Since we are today talking about Arunachal Pradesh, 14,000 crore rupees worth of works are being done only in Arunachal Pradesh. In the last 75 years, we could not get a greenfield airport in Arunachal Pradesh. 3 weeks ago, we have a greenfield airport being inaugurated there.
Padmaja, you are totally exaggerating the development works that is being done.
Sir, I am quoting to you government figures. What is the exaggeration? This is literally government data. A greenfield airport has been inaugurated. I'm not making it up.
I'll take just 20 seconds to explain. I'll just have 20 seconds.
Okay,
when we gained independence When we got independence, India did not have the capacity to manufacture a nail. Today we are sending people to the Mars.
Sir, I am not even
always
comparing.
a development
I am not even
agenda that is
comparing.
coming up.
Forget it. All
We are
right. India
evolving
became
economically,
self-sufficient only 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I still am saying that when you say लाल आंख क्यों नहीं दिखा रहे हैं, I am telling you that लाल आंख does not mean that you go and slap somebody. It means that you match them capability for capability. That is what लाल आंख is.
No, debate, Padmaja, the debate you are twisting it in a different direction. Our question as an opposition party is, when the Prime Minister could lie in front of the all-party meeting, why is the Parliament in session and the government is shying away from a real discussion on the Chinese incursion?
Okay, Captain Alok Bansal, do you think that the government should have made a statement on the 10th itself? If this happened on the 9th and now we are being told 2 separate clashes happened, the 10th the nation should have known.
See, I'm not privy to what happened, but if the things happened, I think once they analyzed it, they should have made a statement. So I'm not in a position to comment on this issue. When did they come to know? Because a proper analysis is essential before a report is disseminated to the public at large and to the countrymen. Because a thorough analysis is essential so that the correct information is given. And these are areas from where the information takes time to disseminate. These are border areas. I think it must have come to higher formations. Higher formations must have passed it on.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where the government had to make a statement. And I'm sure government would probably at some stage make a statement in the parliament, because parliament is in session. They'll probably brief the parliament as to what all has happened.
And as far as even Galwan clash is concerned,
10 seconds,
even
please.
the Galwan clash is concerned, the government did have an all-party meeting. Kamru Choudhury. There was an all-party meeting held. Everyone was called in for it. Everyone was briefed about what is happening. Mr. Choudhury.
Padmaja, you are privy to the entire events that led to that all-party meeting. You know, there was a tremendous pressure building up on the government, and the government had eventually had to call the all-party meeting. You are very much privy to this. And what I told earlier also, the Prime Minister lying on that all-party meeting that there was no incursion in Galwan. Now, when you come to the question of the Lal Arc, you know that very next the Honorable Prime Minister comes on television and says that yesterday we had a surgical strike on Pakistan. So why this not attitude that we cannot show that on the case of China? What is the problem when we are doing a propaganda, when the Pakistani intruders were attacked, when we had a surgical strike on Pakistan?
So just a second, are you saying that the surgical strike was propaganda? You don't really believe that it happened? You think that is propaganda?
I've never said that. I said the Prime Minister the very next day comes on national television and he makes a bombastic speech on the surgical strike. But on Chinese, why is he keeping so silent? Why, when the parliament in session, why there is no statement from the government?
Because sensitivities are different. Or are you saying that there should be a surgical strike on China as well?
Why not? As an Indian, I can always ask.
Sir.
There are strategic interests in place.
And nobody makes any secret about it. Actually, in May this year itself, the Eastern Army Commander, General Kalita, said very clearly. He said that there is infrastructure, there is dual-use villages, dual-purpose villages, which are being set up by China on their side of the boundary. But we are doing the same. We also are building all-weather roads. We really need the Sela Tunnel. We need more border roads to be made. We had the Army Chief, General Pandey, just 2-3 weeks ago, again, when he was in Ladakh, say the same thing, that yes, there has been disengagement, but the situation remains very fluid. So where is the lack of understanding, General Meston, that when you make a statement about Pulwama or you make a statement about the surgical strikes, and when you're talking about China, the two have to be handled very differently, General Meston. And that same applies to the political class as well. The government has to make statements or handle the two very differently, General Meston.
Yeah, as a military man, I would not like to get entangled into a political debate, but nevertheless, I have my views, very strong views on this. The point being made about surgical strikes. See, in that case, we were the planners, we were the executioners, so we had the initiative on our side. Everything was deliberated upon, planned upon, and therefore we had the full laxity to announce it because it was from our side. Initiative was by us. In this case, the Chinese have taken some action, and therefore, now I will explain you the procedure. Why this delay? anything happens, firstly, it's at a platoon or a company level when the contact is there. Immediately, the battalion commander who is located maybe somewhere else, he is informed. First, he will not blindly give a report to his higher headquarter, brigade headquarter. His first job is that he will verify, check, ask a lot of questions, because whatever he reports thereafter becomes authority for the next step. Thereafter, once he is firm, he is very clear, he reports it to the brigade commander. Similarly, he asks a lot of questions, because staff and the commander, there are two channels working. The staff is questioning, the commander is questioning. Thereafter, once he is formed up and he understands what the situation is, because see, no one in the armed forces can ever give an incorrect report.
Yeah.
And tomorrow we have to backtrack on that report, it was by mistake. In war or in such fluid situations, mistakes cannot be made. Therefore, everyone verifies, asks a lot of questions, and after that it goes to the division to the corps to the army commander, that is the Eastern Command. So this itself takes a lot of time, because no one can, it's not like a small thing, anyone will just give a call straight to the Prime Minister of India, sir, something has happened. Yes, they may apprise something is on, but we will come back to you what exactly has happened.
Okay, does the sequence of events now explain, Anirban Banerjee, why a statement has been made today? General Meston has explained exactly what the chain of communication was. So it's not as if somebody WhatsApps from Tawang and says, sir, ye ho gaya. There's a chain of command. Anirban Banerjee.
See, it has become almost our destiny that the propaganda GBs running the government of India right now will commit blunder after blunder after blunder as far as the diplomatic relations with the foreign countries are concerned. And our soldiers will have to pay the heavy price over and over and over again. And then there will be some people, RSS, BJP people mostly, will come on media and do what not to defend those blunderous decisions of the propaganda GBs. We know that this is the destiny of our country right now.
It's very strange that you say that the diplomatic blunders are being done by the government when you keep telling the government every day, go show lal aankh to China. Because that would be the best form of diplomacy. People who sit there and say, why aren't you being more aggressive towards China? Why are you going and even talking to Xi Jinping? Why do you extend him the basic courtesies? Why don't you embarrass China at G20? Today are saying India is diplomatically a failure. Anirban Banerjee.
Who had made these hyperbolic statements in the first place? Was it Mr. Nehru? Or was it Mrs. Indira Gandhi? Or was it Mamata Banerjee?
But sir, that actually depends on what your idea of lal aankh is. While it seems like a great punchline, nobody actually explains. When we sit on television or when we make comments about how India should show red eyes to China, perhaps in the realistic world or in the realistic terms, when the BRO, the Border Roads Organization, says that 2,089 kilometers of roads have been made along the LAC in just the last 5 years. Just the last 5 years, over 2,000 kilometers of roads have been made along the line of actual control. That in the real world is lal aankh. I'm going to leave it at that because this is still a sensitive situation. We are going to hear more details of what actually happened, and tomorrow in Parliament also the issue will be taken up. For the time being though, thanks very much gentlemen for joining me.